We are back. Based on what went on last year when Tennessee was number one in the country in points scored, number one in the country in total offense, you knew there was going to be an excitement level heading into this season. At SEC Media Days, I remember someone asked something to the effect of, "What about ticket sales?" And the number I heard, and this was in mid July, was 71,000 season tickets sold. That is strong. With that as a backdrop, we say hello to the one and only Tony Basilio, longtime Knoxville sports talk show host, and a man who has the pulse of Big Orange country. Do you
Wow,
like
you say that with such confidence, George. I hope that's true.
So I don't know what the number is now. I'm sure it's a little bit more than 71, but regardless, what is the pulse? What is the excitement level that you feel up there?
It's like being 9 years old, and it's around the holidays, and you're getting ready to open your presents, and people are just happy to have Tennessee football back. And I mean that like metaphorically, and then I also mean that they're happy to have a program back. So there's two sides to that. There's the side of we're all glad that Tennessee's a living, breathing part of this that kind of matters again in college football.
Relevant.
It's a great term. And so I think that's probably the most important thing to consider. The other side of it is that, this season, just like with a lot of programs around the SEC, a lot of programs around college football, Tennessee's got some question marks. And Saturday will be an interesting time to answer those questions. And we'll have to wait and see how that goes, George. Their offensive line situation is one that I've talked about a bunch on my show, and people get extremely frustrated. I had some callers today calling me, kind of ripping me, attacking me because I refuse to give into the narrative that all of a sudden Josh Heupel's got to go 11-1 or 10-2 or whatever the number is, because everybody has some kind of expectation when really this year is really a bridge year for the Vols. That's really what this year is. It's kind of a bridge year to Nico and what's going to be down the line.
So, I asked this question a while back,
Right.
with the quarterback situation as it is. And I'll admit that I have been skeptical of what Tennessee is trying to make work for a full year. But on the other hand, doesn't Heupel have to go to his starting quarterback and say, look, if things don't work well in the first game or two, we're not yanking you? Or is it we are yanking you?
George, I don't think Josh Heupel, being a former quarterback, and Kelly can speak to this more than I could, I don't think he would ever put in the back of that kid's mind that, hey, we're watching you. The message to him is, you're our quarterback, you're our quarterback, you're our quarterback. And they really want him to succeed. And really, they want him to succeed for all the right reasons. He could have left a couple of years ago and nobody would have blamed him. But he didn't. And I just don't think Josh Heupel's the type. I don't think he coaches that way. Would walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, if you don't get it done the first couple games, we're going to pull you." Look, Joe Milton knows the stakes here. He's had jobs, he's lost jobs here in Michigan. He's had jobs and lost jobs. But he's also seen here somebody really succeed in this offense, and I think he sees an opportunity to do that here.
When we saw him here against Vandy, he wasn't great, but he didn't have to be great. and Tennessee won in a blowout. He shocked some of us with the way he played against Clemson because it was really good in that Orange Bowl game. In the preseason workouts, what's been the consensus of what level he's at?
He's been pretty good leading up to the season. Look, I just think so much focus is on him that no matter what he does, it's not going to matter until he does it in a season. Tennessee's offense in the preseason with the Cooper Mays injury, and then Tennessee's defense has gotten better. So they probably aren't where they want to be coming into this game. But I think there's a lot of teams around the country you could probably say that about offensively right now. So the question becomes not this week in Nashville or even next week when they play Austin Peay, but really in 3 weeks when you go and you play Florida, what's it look like? And when you go down there. And that's really going to be their first real test. I guess in college football, you never know. I mean, Virginia could have something we're not expecting, but I expect Saturday to be kind of a celebration of Tennessee football in Nashville. And let it be said that, Virginia's overcoming a lot with that tragedy and what happened. And I can't imagine being a part of their program, being one of their fans, having, the last couple of games of last year wiped away, and everything that's gone into that whole Virginia experience. I just can't imagine what it's going to be like for those kids, because they lost 3 of their teammates last year, and it's in a senseless tragedy.
Yeah. Billy, if you will, put that picture up again of Tennessee in the bowl game against Purdue a couple of years. It was an incredible sight.
Yep.
And an incredible football game. So, Tony, let me ask you this. Is it simply a money grab on Virginia's part? Why did they want to walk into something that feels like David versus Goliath?
Well, I mean, George, the backstory on this game was that Tennessee was supposed to play. This is supposed to be a return engagement this week to BYU. That's what this game is supposed to be.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so BYU came to Knoxville
Mm-hmm.
in the junior season of the Wilson kid before he had the breakout year. And that was during the Pruitt era. And they scored a couple of touchdowns late to beat Tennessee. He made a couple throws late up the field to beat Tennessee. Tennessee was supposed to return the favor this season and go to BYU. Danny White and Josh Heupel decided last year before last season they didn't want to do that. So they bought out. They paid $2 million to BYU to get out of it. And they needed an opponent. So they needed an opponent. And so for their opponent, they asked around and they found Virginia ready, willing, and able to take the game. When Virginia took the game, Mendenhall was still the coach there. And, of course, Tony Elliott had his first year there last year, which was not a good year for them. They don't have much of a team. And then it was cut short with the tragedy.
Kelly, what do you got for Tony?
Well, I was just going to go back to what y'all were saying about the quarterbacks. I'm like Tony. I don't think that Josh Heupel is that type of a coach. I was forced into that situation when I was with the Browns myself and Tim Couch, and they kind of pitted us against each other, and it just wasn't that way. But I will say this: when you go into a game and you got a guy that has started, and then you got a guy that's playing that it's always in the back of your mind that if I don't play good, then he's going to put me in. And then I can remember talking to Tim. He felt the same way about me if he didn't play good. So as a quarterback, you cannot have those thoughts in your head. And I'm like, Tony, I don't think Josh Heupel is that type of guy, because if you've got your starter, you've got to show him that you're your starter and that you believe in him. And I don't think that would ever happen. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I was going to ask, I'm not going to ask, but I was just going to just inject that into the conversation. But Other than the O-line, Tony, what is the biggest what is the biggest thing going on? I mean, I know we got some problems with the O-line, and give us an update on Cooper Mays. What are they saying about him? Is he coming back anytime soon, or I mean, is he going to miss significant time still?
He's going to miss significant time, and Josh Heupel's not saying. Now, Heupel's one of these guys when it comes to an injury report that's just never going to tell you the truth. They're just never going to give you anything. And so it's kind of left to us to sort of dig around. Most people that do what I'm doing aren't going to say what I'm going to say, which is Mays is telling people behind the scenes he's not even going to play in the Florida game. They don't expect he'll even play in the Florida game. So you're looking at a guy probably missing the first month of the season. Look, when you're kind of on the beat and you're over there and you got to have your access and you need this and you need that, I just decided a long time ago I'm going to deal on the real. And the real is that they're not going to have him. And the real is that without him, their tempo struggles because as a center in that offense, he had a real gift of getting them into plays, getting them lined up very quickly, and they would go very quickly. And his replacement is a guy who hasn't played much by the name of Ollie Lane, who is learning that position on the fly, essentially, and learning the checks, the reads, and the go fast, and all those things that go with that. And that's been kind of a struggle for them, and sort of a source of frustration as well in their practices leading up to the start of the season. But the good news for them is they get to play 2 football games to iron it out before they get to probably go to Florida without Cooper Mays is the way it looks right now. At least that's what Cooper's telling people. And that's a blow to them. One of the Learn It beat writers, Adam Sparks from in Nashville, who used to cover Vanderbilt, Adam asked Josh Heupel yesterday at his weekly news conference. He said, so what's more important, tempo or execution? Which is a way of saying, you're not going to have your center. Yeah. So what do we want to do? Do we want to go fast or do we want to get into the right plays? And what do you think Heupel said, Kelly?
Well, I mean, I know he wants to go fast, but we got to get into the right place.
That's what he said. He said, look, we got to execute rather than go fast. And that's tough, because so much of what Tennessee does, so much of what makes Josh Heupel different is that while you're going 55 or 65 miles an hour down the road, he's going 90 and making it look easy.
That's right. So other than the O-line, what other big concern do you think they have going into the game offensively or defensively?
Well, Tennessee's other bugaboo, and they've got players there, but do they have the right players? And are the veteran players gonna do enough to kind of satisfy? But their secondary's gonna be still in question. And so the question becomes with their secondary, what happens here if you get in a game where all of a sudden Virginia can complete some passes? Now, Virginia has a quarterback from Monmouth. We all know Joe Milton has a cannon for an arm. He just does, right? But this guy here is Tony Muskett.
Yeah.
And what if Muskett's firing properly?
That's right.
I mean, all of a sudden you got a cannon.
How long have you been saving that one?
Well, you've got a cannon versus a musket, but this guy, George, is from
Bazooka Joe versus Tony Muskett.
Yeah. Hey, and the guy grew up in Alexandria, Virginia. He grew up right there in the D.C. area, probably an hour or so from their campus. This got to be a thrill for that kid to go from Monmouth to get an opportunity to play for UVA, to get a chance to play against the Tennessee Volunteers on national television. I mean, that's what this country's about. Of course, I don't think Tennessee has a great fear of him. But again, in these games, you never know. This guy could turn into a world beater. I mean, he could be the talk of college football by the end of the weekend. And truly, you just do not know what's going to happen in these games. You just don't.
Well, that you kind of took my next question, like the Tony Muskett kid. Like, is there any concerns, like listening to Josh Heupel talk,
No,
Is there anything that Virginia concerns him with? No.
not offensively. Now, defensively, they're pretty good. Defensively, their front seven's pretty good. Their
Right.
defensive line's okay. They're, you use the term replacement level in with the WAR stat in baseball, and their offense is just below replacement level players, just all across the board. They're just not very good offensively at all. I mean, why else would you go get a quarterback from Monmouth? And no offense to the guy.
I didn't know Monmouth had a football team.
That's the point,
They
right?
do.
That is the point. Yeah.
That's messed up, George. I was reading an article a couple of weeks ago about Tony Elliott. And Tony Elliott came and interviewed for the Tennessee job. And, he threw it out there that he kind of turned the job down. And then Danny White had to come out. Is that bulletin board material, or does that even have an effect on anything?
And is it true?
Is what true?
Is it true that he turned Tennessee down?
Yes. I think he turned them down twice. I think the way it went is, Danny is spinning. He's spinning the media, which I love. I'm for spinning. I'm all for spinning. I'm just not going to be spun. We covered it. We were talking to people while this was going on. The first call, Danny White, when he got the job, told Tennessee's brass down in Orlando, he got them really excited. He said, "Look, I can go get us Brian Kelly. I have a relationship with him with my Notre Dame connections. I got my doctorate degree there at Notre Dame. I can get him." I give Danny White a lot of credit because at the time when they were chasing him, we in real time on the show were saying, that's crazy. They would have, why would that guy who's Mr. Catholic ever leave Notre Dame? Well, guess what? A year later, he left for LSU, which means Danny White knew that he was available. So I put one in the win column there for Danny White, even though he didn't get him. The second guy they talked to was James Franklin, who George at Vanderbilt was a miracle worker.
He was indeed.
Who is a little bit, when you get down to it, a little bit at a time at Penn State. Now, in the 12-team playoff, they'll be more in the conversation and would have been many, many times. But as long as you're in a 4-team type scenario, they've got to get past Michigan and Ohio State if they want to do anything. Now, they can get past one, but not the other, and that's kept them out a couple times. So, so that's, even though he's won 10 games, I think I've looked it up. I think in his tenure there, he's won 10 games 4 or 5 times, including a league championship. So he's not chopped liver. Anyway, James Franklin, when it came down to it, asked them for an exorbitant number, kind of like what Jimbo Fisher would have, that kind of buyout if you want to commit to him. So they decided, we're not going to do that. Then they went to Tony Elliott, and Tony turned them down. Tony turned them down twice. Then they went to Josh Heupel. Now, what Danny White, and he wants to have his own narrative, and that's fine. But what Danny White is telling people is, no, this is the first guy I offered the job to. Well, I would say to that, this is a question. If that's the case, why didn't you fly him up on the airplane with you when you took the job and introduce him? Why did we do that for 3 weeks? Oh, that's right, because he wasn't the first guy you offered the job to. But that's how these guys, that's how this works. And I don't know. I thought it was odd of Danny to get into that. But since then, he's kind of stayed out of it. So.
Yeah, so my last deal, obviously I asked you this a couple of months ago, but how are the Herring boys doing?
They're going to be, both of those guys figure in Tennessee's plans. One of them they thought was kind of a throw-in to get the younger one. And they're both really nice players, as you know.
Oh yeah,
they're both nice
absolutely,
players.
Absolutely. Has any of them got have they got a chance? Or I know they're going to. I don't know about starting, but I know that on special teams. But down the road, I know that they like Caleb because Caleb's 6'5". He's going to be big. He's got long arms.
They like both of them. They
okay,
like both
good.
of them. Both of those guys figure in their plans. And a lot of times in recruiting, the narrative becomes, well, this guy, they got this guy to get this guy. No. If that's the case, then they got a surprise because the older Herring is a nice player. They both figure in Tennessee's plans.
Good. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, Tony, let's do the clock. 11 o'clock start time here.
Yeah.
Probably over 2:15, 2:30. So when do you hit the airwaves? Because your stuff is incredibly interesting. How can people hear it and when?
Yeah. So we're available on tclub.team. Also, we've got a new thing we're doing this year on Twitter, Spaces, X, whatever that is. But it's a way people can hear the show. And not only do you hear the show, but you hear externally what's going on in my studio. So like we'll have John Adams from the News Sentinel in here and a couple other people, and I'll be queuing them up while people are talking. As you know, George, you tell people when you mute yourself, hey, you get this one, you get that one. I'll be traffic hopping in here, and people get to hear all that. The background chatter. I've been doing that during my daily show, George. People can listen in during our commercial breaks, and they hear us kind of yelling and screaming at each other, or talking about our day, or whatever the case is. But tclub.team is my website. We're there every day. And George, I'm surprised you're saying the game's going to take 3.5 hours. Don't you know we've got these new clock rules now? And
You're right.
And the games are. Do you realize those games were 4 minutes different than last year? Which means what they've done is they've gone and they've jammed a bunch of commercial inventory into these games. Unlike baseball, who actually has made their product shorter. College football had no interest in making their product shorter, George. The only thing they want to do is jam more and more and more and more advertising into their. I mean, they're getting like. They're getting like the successful radio shows like you.
Well, no,
That's what I'm trying to do.
Hold on. Here's what ends up happening. You think about this because you hear this in major league games.
Yeah.
Bryce Harper at the plate. He's 0 for 2 this afternoon, grounded to first and walked in the second, takes outside for ball 1. The official car rental of the Phillies is such and such ball 2.
Yes, you're so right.
They
George,
are.
Could we, and here's the thing, I've done play-by-play. You did it on a higher level than I did it, but I can't imagine having all those reads.
Oh, my God.
And having to do that and call the action. I was listening to a Yankee game a couple weeks ago on the radio, and I was listening to, what's the guy's name? He's in his 80s.
John Sterling.
Sterling and Susan Waldman. Every single breath they take is sponsored.
It is.
It's obscene.
They have hoarded that thing out to the max.
It's incredible. Yeah, I'm jealous. Because I'm a whore for sure, okay, when it comes to the radio. And I'm jealous of them.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so you're thinking 2:30 is when Nashville time.
They're telling me 2 o'clock. They're saying 3-hour games. Kelly believes it. Hey, listen.
That Vandy game took an eternity on Saturday night.
Thank you.
My goodness.
Oh, by the way, speaking of Vandy, I'm glad you guys brought that up.
I knew this was coming.
No. I've got a listener that I made a bet with, okay? And I told him he needs to pay up because he said there'd be 20,000 there. Now, I told him I would come to you and Billy because they're announcing 21. Now, George, you know what announced crowds are. Announced crowds are professional wrestling, for those of you that believe in that, and that's fine. So Billy and George, and Billy, you were there. George, were you there?
Yes, I was.
Okay. How many people were there? What's your guesstimate?
17.
15, 16.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I said under 20. I win the bet?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. By the way, Hawaii brought more than I thought they would. These Rainbow Warriors travel.
That's cool.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it?
You think Virginia travels, Tony?
Do what now?
You think Virginia travels at all?
No.
I don't know. Again, I feel so sorry for those people. Nashville's such a destination, guys. Like I was saying on the radio this week, to the Tennessee fans, go down there and hang out with the bridesmaids on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Because y'all turned into. When did this happen? When did we start?
I don't know.
That's a thing, isn't it?
I go downtown as little as I can.
It's crazy downtown. Crazy.
My daughter's 24. She was down there Friday night. She said, "Dad, that is too much for me." She said it was. People were everywhere.
Everywhere.
And the bride and the brides and the bridesmaids and all those.
Hey, thanks as always.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Talk
you.
to you.
Man.
Yeah.
Tony
have a great week.
Basilio, man, he is great and he is fun and he keeps us updated on what really is going on at the University of Tennessee.
I love how he acted like he didn't have the pulse of
Yeah,
Knoxville.
he's got the pulse.